Can we restart, bud? I'm sorry.
It's live, so I think we.
It's live? Awesome.
Yeah,
Perfect.
we're live.
Oh, we're live. That's the benefit. Let me just double check that I've got the desired audio settings before we get started
You're
here.
coming in loud and clear on
Great.
my end, so that's at least.
The last
good.
time we did this, I think it pulled from my video. I had a separate recorder.
Oh,
Anyways.
it pulled from your webcam, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we're live. You guys getting to see it all happen here.
That's how the sausage is made.
Bud, tell me no, there are no retakes. So, all right, here we go. Great to be back behind the mic, and this is a professional podcast, I promise. So, as always, we're going to thank our sponsors, Louisiana Hot Sauce. Just incredible that we've been able to have a national food sponsor for, I think, 8 years now, 7 years. And the great people at Tarpon Cellars, a high-quality, kind of a statement wine, a special occasion, a gift for significant occurrence in life, whatever, but great people and fantastic wine. TarponCellars.com is the website. Nolecast is the coupon code for 20% off. And with that, Bud, we got a bunch of listener questions. Going to bring you up to speed on kind of this, that, and the other in the world of Florida State football, and we'll jump into this podcast.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that thing, man. First, I do want to shout out Tarpon Cellars Winery. Excellent winery. And, hey, notification gang out there. That's right. The live listeners say they got the notification. So that is awesome. Really appreciate you guys tuning in and having those notifications on. Hit like on the video if you would. I do want to have a small update to an episode that we did a couple weeks ago. We did the Snap Count Draft review, and we forgot to mention which charity that I wanted Ingram to donate to. Now, 2 years ago when I won, Ingram donated to a charity in Immokalee, which helps victims of domestic abuse, which is a great charity. But this year I wanted to switch it up. It's a little more personal to me. So, good friend of mine growing up, Johnny Worka, we grew up just down the road from each other. Both went to Florida State together. He was a big ice hockey player. He became a combat diver in special forces and ended up being a warrant officer. And sadly, he passed away last year. So my charity this year, and you can see I'm wearing my Johnny Worka number 8 shirt, and I'll show you guys the back. It's pretty badass. I don't know if they're selling anymore on the thing. I'll put the link in the show notes. But my charity tonight is the United for the Fallen. United for the Fallen is benefiting children and widows of military personnel who tragically pass away far too early. So if you guys want to support them, I know Ingram will be supporting them. And so I don't want to start it out on a somber note, but that's the update on the charity. And I was really excited to get my shirt in to show love for the Workas. We're thinking about you guys still. So top of mind tonight, there's no real great way to transition out of that, I guess, is the Georgia opening for the offensive line coach. I've seen Alex Atkins' name floated for that. I don't really buy that that's going to happen. Atkins already made really good money at FSU. We know he got a bump. They made sure to take care of him, and he's the offensive coordinator now, which is what Mike Norvell had assured him he would be. And when Kenny Dillingham left, that's the role that he got. I'm under the impression that unless something weird happens, that Alex Atkins is going to remain at Florida State with Mike Norvell up until the point when Mike Norvell is no longer the coach. Right now, hopefully that's just 40 years from now when Norvell retires. But I think Atkins someday will be a head coach. We know he's a really good recruiter. I think he's a bright football mind, relates to players really well. And while Georgia certainly has SEC money, it's not like FSU is unable to pony up for coaches, especially ones that it really wants to keep. So we saw them throwing around pretty big money behind the scenes this year for some assistants, and ultimately that didn't necessarily land them anybody. We'll talk about that more in one of our Patreon listener questions. But I can't guarantee it. I guess nothing in life is guaranteed. But I don't think Alex Atkins is going anywhere.
Well, good. That is good to hear. That kind of pairs with what I had heard as well. I mean, I certainly realize that going to Georgia, and Georgia is kind of the it program right now, or at least one or two or three, is very attractive. But obviously your desire is to do a good job where you are, develop players, carve out a name for yourself. But if your one is to be a head coach, it's a tough chessboard to make sense of as to why to leave a place where you're offense coordinator to go back to a position coach, and potentially be kind of pegged in as to nothing other than a SEC offensive line coach, would certainly get paid well, but few and far between make a whole lot of career progression from there. So I think it's a smart choice for Atkins. Certainly a guy that is incredibly highly thought of by almost everybody in the program. And if it, like you said, I don't think Florida State's going to win a bidding war with Georgia, but I don't think Florida State would get embarrassed for money either. They would make a very strong play to keep him, and good to hear that seems to be trending positive for Florida State fans.
Yeah, and I'm not really, I mean, just because your name gets put on a hot board doesn't necessarily mean that you're seriously considering it, although it's good leverage, right? I mean, certainly I think we've all been there when we get a nice new deal and then all of a sudden some kind of really nice offer comes along. It's one that maybe you don't really want to take, but you certainly play it into something if you're smart to do so. I certainly have been in that spot before. So anyway, yeah, let's do we have any other new news here to get to? I think we have some, a couple things. You want to go to the Sports Podcast Awards?
Yeah, we can mention real quickly, big thanks to our listening audience. From the time that we mentioned this to our Patreons, I think 24 hours before we mentioned it on a live show or a show that was dispersed to the broader audience, we've been number one on the charts, and that's awesome. Doesn't mean that we've won anything, doesn't mean that it's done, but I think there's still about 2 weeks worth of voting. If you get a chance to go to sportspodcastawards.com, the Nolecast is listed and nominated as the number one college sports podcast, and that would be awesome if we could win that. So if you get a chance, you can use email, you can use a secondary email, you might be able to use a third email that you're not sure as to whether you're even in possession of. But yeah, we would encourage you to support us if you can, and massive thank you from Bud and I for the level of support that we've received already.
All right, so a couple things here. Brendan Gant listed as a linebacker on the updated roster and on the academic achievement banner, excuse me. We're also going to shoot our defensive spring questions and preview tonight, and we'll release that probably on Friday or maybe on Saturday morning. Just stay tuned. Might chop it up for the YouTube channel. But I'll ask you, does this surprise you? Do you make anything of this? Are you expecting anything to come from this move? What are you thinking here?
Not to be too critical on a kid, but I think there was a general idea of maybe what can we do to get this guy out of the defensive back room, to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, I know that's maybe not the friendliest remark to put on a situation, but it hadn't been a great place, the defensive back room. And if you look at some of the additions that Florida State's brought on, I think it's specifically in an attempt to kind of address the culture in that room. And Gant is a nice tackler. I've always been very complimentary about his general kind of understanding of the geometry of the game. He gets himself in the right place and, to me, appears to have a pretty strong idea of pursuit angles and stuff like that. But it wasn't working out. And he had a very disappointing season last year, whether it be PFF rating or just I think I took him in the snap draft at 385, and at the time we both thought that was great value. No, it wasn't. So hopefully he lands at linebacker as a success. He's got some nice things in his game that might help him in that transition, but I think this is more an attempt to try to isolate some individuals and try to get the best out of a broader room.
I like that term. Isolate some individuals. We'll see. We'll see how that continues to go. I'll save my thoughts on that, I guess, for the linebacker preview. We'll see how much time we devote to that. But I'm a little surprised he's still on the roster, to be honest. Not somebody that I'm really counting on going forward. And I hope I'm wrong about that. But I don't know. Maybe Randy Shannon, as the DC and linebackers coach, can get something out of him that Adam Fuller and DB guys couldn't. We'll see. But I think you're right, though, in that if there's a room that you still need to clean up culture-wise, as far as guys showing up on time, guys being good people, guys just generally doing the right thing, it's the DB room. There's really no doubt about it in my mind. So maybe you move some of those guys around, you split them up and divide and conquer or something like that. All right, something that never divides and conquers, they just conquer, is the legendary team with Chad and Shannon. 844 FSU Loan. It's 844 FSU Loan. Talked to Chad and Shannon just the other day. And obviously, what are we, over 250 loans now for Nolecast listeners? Or are we at 300 yet?
I think we're in a number that starts with 3, to be honest with you.
Okay.
We had another
we're
4 close last week, and it's just been incredible. I mean, I know that's a redundant observation, something that I've been saying for about a year and a half now, but it's true. I mean, it was didn't start off great. There was a period of time, and I think we've acknowledged this, that Chad and Shannon weren't sure they were going to renew with us, and man, a message takes a second to hit, and it takes a second to take, but when it took, and the response has been incredible. So, yeah, those guys are great. You've worked with them twice, have a level of personal experience that a lot of people can't reference when talking about a sponsor, and it's been nothing but a match made in heaven.
Absolutely, guys. 844 FSU Loan is the number to call. Tell them we sent you. Let's go ahead and get on to a bit of an NIL conversation. And if we feel rushed tonight, we're not really, I don't know, maybe it feels rushed. To me, it feels rushed. But we do have 9 listener questions to get to. And this is kind of more of a mailbag episode. And we're also shooting the defensive coordinator, defensive preview for spring tonight as well. We have a lot of this in the listener questions. Do you want to punt this to listener questions?
I'll take Tim's listener question. Just drop it in here, and
then let's take Tim. Tim, you're leading off tonight.
Tim says, "How do you both feel regarding the big picture when it comes to the money in NIL? I feel that the new pendulum is swung from chocolate fountains and waterfalls to straight up dollars for athletes. I know you both committed in the past many times about being all in. And while I surely understand the meaning, aren't we really past facilities and coaches being the greatest draw, and flat-out dollars promise being the way to rocket you up the charts to give blue chippers?" So, interesting question, Tim. And like we said, NIL is always a popular topic of conversation right now, and particularly with this fan base. So, thought we would use it as just a nice little tool to drift into it here. So, I think there's some skepticism or some pessimism, and I myself have it and have voiced it. And I also think there's some optimism about what Florida State's doing. I have seen on the internet over the past month or so some talk about Florida State's NIL deal or potential deal with Travis Hunter. I know that's a sore subject to bring up, but let's talk about it. Florida State had a significant amount of stuff lined up for Hunter. I can say that with a big degree of confidence, one of which, and I don't think, but I'm betraying confidence to talk about this, one of them was an energy drink that you can find in your local gas station. I mean, they were going to have some things lined up for him that you can't, unfortunately, just transition to Julian Armella or whatever other member of the staff, right? It's kind of got to be a super dynamic number one player in the class, somebody that's not just a high 4 or 5 star. Did they have as much as, maybe some of these rumors about what Jackson State and Barstool and stuff were able to put together? No. Did they try to do it?
Barstool's coming out with their Dion, their new 6-episode Dion documentary, right?
Of course they are. Of course. I mean, it was the greatest content that
Barstool this, by the way,
could have ever made. We predicted it on.
We did not predict Travis Hunter to Jackson State. I want to be clear on that.
No, we predicted it was a content buy. Absolutely. Yes. And a brilliant one at that.
Right. I fully believe that FSU NIL would have made Travis Hunter like one of the first $1 million non-quarterback players. I don't know if that was going to be all in year one, but I think there are a few kids in the last cycle who got $1 million per year who were not quarterbacks, but not many. Like we're still not dealing with that where all of your I guarantee you all the 5 stars aren't averaging $1 million a year.
Mm-hmm.
I think FSU's package that they would have given Travis Hunter had he gotten on campus. Obviously, it's not an inducement, Ingram.
Never,
not
never
allowed to be used as
confused as such.
I think it would have been very competitive. I do not know that they had everything lined up last year on signing day down the board, meaning like on all the guys, clearly I think they could have done a much better job with NIL and Tyree West specifically, if you want to call out a certain guy, and probably Basaint. But with Travis Hunter, I do think they had their ducks in a row there. And, that just didn't work out. So
I don't think they tried to go to Aldi and buy Travis Hunter or whatever. I mean, they realized you weren't going to get Travis Hunter for $130,000 or something like that, which is what I've seen kind of thrown around. So,
like for one deal, I think they had that.
I think so for one deal.
If people are assuming that one deal was the entirety of it, I think they're crazy.
Right. So,
now to the rest of this question, I think it's interesting, and I really would encourage you guys to go. And I'm not trying to just pimp Cover 3 here, but I thought today's Cover 3 was one of the best episodes we've ever done. And if you want to skip over the playoff expansion talk and what it means for each conference, you can. Just go to like the 30-minute mark where we start talking about the future of player compensation and whatnot. And, I kind of went on a little diatribe about this, and I'll give you a little mini version here. But Tim's question is like, hey, I think the pendulum has swung from chocolate fountains and waterfalls to straight up dollars for athletes. And he's right. Okay. I was talking to Danny Cannell, who all FSU fans watching and listening to this probably know who that is. And he's like, look, man, guys still sign in Cincinnati. They don't have an indoor facility. Guys still sign with Pittsburgh. Their facilities suck. You don't actually need an indoor practice facility and a football-only facility and all this stuff to compete. All right? Now, you do if everybody else kind of has it, and the entity of college football is trying to act as a nonprofit, as they are, which basically requires you to have this great spend down and show that you don't actually turn a profit. And so how do you do that? Well, you spend a boatload of money on coaching salaries, and you spend a ton of money on buildings, because where else are you going to put it if your entire premise is not paying the players? Once you start paying the players, stuff like Clemson having a slide and all that crap, that won't matter. Now, if the difference in facilities is just enormous, where you have a little shack and somebody else has a mansion, that could be a deciding factor, because NIL is not the only thing that matters in recruiting. But how do Tampa Bay Rays sign free agents? Their facilities suck, right? I mean, well, no state tax helps, and they have money. Now, not a lot of it, but when they want to sign somebody, they usually get the guy because they give him the best offer. That's just how capitalism works. That's American. The whole colluding, to not pay the players has resulted in these Taj Mahal buildings, and as Tim puts it, chocolate fountains and waterfalls, or chocolate waterfalls maybe, to show that you're a nonprofit when you're really not anymore. You're only a nonprofit because you dump all this money into infrastructure and crazy coaching salaries, But Belichick makes $15 million and Mahomes makes $45. Basically, no sport in the country that brings in serious money has head coaches and assistants making anywhere close to what the better players on the team make. And I think eventually we will probably get to that sort of equilibrium, or if not, failing that, we will probably stop trying to spend so much money on these buildings. Now, that is an interesting situation for FSU because they are trying to get the football-only facility finished, right? And I don't think that's necessarily a bad endeavor. It's something that, building-wise, you would really like to have in Tallahassee, and obviously with the geography of the campus. But long-term, that might be the last building they build.
Mm-hmm.
As far as you'll do upgrades and stuff, but realistically,
I'm in complete agreement. That may be Florida State's last piece of the arms race for the next decade. Was this said slightly in tongue-in-cheek? Probably. One of Florida State's biggest boosters I talked to the night of signing day said, why are we even building this thing? It's obvious that Travis Hunter doesn't care what type of building.
It's a fair question.
What type of building his ankles get taped in, right? I mean, because he's going to be doing it at a cafeteria at Jackson State. I think for a period of time, the paradigm was that you poured all this money into buildings and you thought you were woefully falling behind if you didn't. And I think much more of that will be going directly towards players and offensive tackles and defensive ends, etc., etc. Could that be beneficial for Florida State? Yeah, it could be, but you're saying you're going to run into the same challenges regardless of where these dollars are being funneled. But we're certainly in agreement that I think the FOF will be the last piece of the arms race that you see in Tallahassee for the foreseeable future.
I agree with that. Where do you want to take this now? We already did Tim's question. You want to go to what do you want to do? You want to go to Sam? You want to go to Grant? Where are you feeling?
Yeah, we did make it a little choppy by going and grabbing Tim's question. Let's talk real quickly, bud, about the general importance of the 22 season and particularly the LSU game, and then we'll devote it strictly to listener questions on the way out. This is not a podcast that's built on hyperbole or shock jock or anything else, but I find myself having a hard time thinking that this season is anything other than what the deciding factor of Mike Norvell's tenure will be. And I'm not saying the LSU game is going to decide it. It's not. But I do think it has the ability to... Is it going to erase what happened in December last year on early signing day? No. Does it have a chance to right a lot of the wrongs kind of in people's ideas, the perception of the program, where the program's trending, etc.? Yeah, it does. Is Mike on the hot seat as far as the idea of getting fired? No. Does this season probably dictate whether or not he's a success and whether or not he sees year 5? I think absolutely. So it's a wildly important year. I don't, every year is important. We talk 365 days a year for maybe 13 or 14 Saturdays. All these games mean a ton. That's the beauty of college football. But this season, incredibly, incredibly important for Florida State, for Mike Norvell, and I feel, from a broader perspective, a little bit the trajectory of the program in general.
I don't disagree with you there. I thought it was interesting what you said, right? You said, couldn't erase the issues of December. And I think it's sort of a bifurcated answer. In the minds of fans, yes, it absolutely can erase it. Fans are very much what have you done for me lately. They're fickle, and fan is short for fanatic, and don't ever forget it. So, yes, like you come out, you beat LSU, you start hot, they will absolutely forget what happened in December. Now, where it cannot erase it, regardless of result, is on the roster. Where you'll feel it for the next 3 years is in the talent level of this team, because you did not go out and get enough difference makers to get where you need to go, most likely, in time that you as a coach, need to show it. Unless they pull some kind of absolute miracle this year on the recruiting trail, which is possible. Miracles happen every day. So
I don't see miracles taking place so far. I think you got a chance to sign some good kids. I'm not going to pee all over everybody's Cheerios, but you're not 5 stars that even 6 months ago had you listed, now don't have you listed in their top 8 and stuff like that. So, you're going to have to hit with the kids that you can get in on, and there's some nice, really solid 4-star prospects. Love the offensive line prospect that you talked about a month ago on here. And
Rod Kearney?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
that'd be an incredible ad for Florida State. That's a 4-star prospect. That would be a 5-star get for Florida State if you could get. So I'm not saying that you're not going to sign any really good kids, but as far as super elite talent, it's going to be real hard for you to get in the high school avenue. And in that respect, you're certainly right that you could beat LSU 38-3, and it's not going to change the talent that you have, or it's not going to give you Jones Jr. or any of the other pieces that you missed out on December, but would go a long way in kind of getting the collective fan base's headspace right.
Yeah, where that kills you ultimately is 23 and 24. Like you're not going to lose a whole lot of games this fall or win a whole lot of games this fall due to what happened in December. It's 2 years and 3 years from now that it really kind of kills you. All right, let's go ahead and we'll take Sam's question here. I was wondering what books Bud has on a shelf in the background with the new layout, and also if either of you had any book recommendations for the off season. I read The 50-Year Seduction by Keith Dunavant last summer, and even though the book was published in 2005, I still found it very relevant to what is going on today with NCAA, conference realignment, etc. I also plan on reading The Club by Joshua Robinson and Jonathan Clegg, since it seemed everyone that covered college football last year talked about how analogous it is to the direction college football is headed. I would agree with that one. I'm curious if either of you had a chance to read it or had any thoughts about it. So quickly here, a couple books. So I
Got
have
some Hunter S. Thompson back there.
I
thought
do
I
have some
saw.
Hunter S. Thompson.
Yeah.
I've got Hunter S. Thompson. I have The System by Armin Katayan, which is really, really good. I think it's still relevant because it shows all these kind of backroom deals are going on a lot longer ago than y'all think. Fourth Down in Dunbar is a good book about using football to get out of tough situations. Running for My Life, the Work Done story, and Salt, which is kind of cool. How Element
Did I give you
that? No, but it's a good read.
All right. I had a couple copies of that in the first place where I was living, where you came up a couple times. I thought it might have pawned one off on you. It's a great. I thoroughly enjoyed reading that.
The one book I would really recommend you guys read, though, is called The Sinful Seven. It's a quick read, take you a day or two, depending on how fast you read, how much time you got. It's an ebook, so you just go Google The Sinful Seven, and it is a sci-fi western about the history of college football. It's pretty cool. It's Jason Kirk and Spencer Hall and Holly and Brian and those, but it's really good. And they kind of go explain like how exactly they all colluded to basically like say that the reason college football is great is because we don't pay the players. And it's like, agreed. Yes, this is for the true period, like post war. But it's a really good book. It lays out the history of the sport pretty well. What do you got?
Oh no, I was checking on some of we got some wonderful questions coming in the YouTube chat.
Is a good, what is the best cake tasting flavor you had?
I mean, I liked them all and ultimately defer to whatever Christina liked. But
Smart man,
I like carrot cake. Actually, I know that's a real hit or miss with some people. I'll probably do that as a groomsman cake. Might even see the podcast of the logo of our podcast on it, bud. Who knows?
Nice.
But cake tasting was nice, and hated to miss a podcast, but schedules just didn't really line up last week. And this is not shameless promotion or anything else, but thoroughly enjoyed the podcast that you did, and would encourage anybody that didn't listen to it to go back and give it a good listen. Had a couple friends of mine text me. I think Bud was even mildly optimistic in that. So if that's a version of Bud Elliott that you want to consume, I would encourage you to go back a week, find that one, and give it a listen.
I like lemon coconut cake, but like you, I let Maggie pick what flavor cake we had for our wedding.
Yeah. Well,
and I won't tell her this, but I actually don't even remember what she picked. Yeah. But
I'd love to tell you too. I don't remember. I had a lot of drinks and really loved that seafood bar you guys did. That's what stood out to me. Absolutely.
That was solid. All right, let's take Grant's question here.
Do you feel Norvell and staff have raised the talent floor to this point, despite the misses of the recruiting cycle? Yeah, good question, Grant. Overall level of talent, yeah, I do think it has risen. Now, has it risen enough to be successful next year? And it's kind of the conversation we were just having. We'll find out. I'm really worried about 2023. I've talked about it. Incredible amount of depletion of the defensive side of the ball in particular. But, maybe you continue to strike lightning in the portal and you're able to go grab 3 or 4 or 5 kids that can immediately start and work in the locker room and everything else. I do think that the staff has done a very good job in the portal. Now, I'm skeptical as to how much of a skill set that's repeatable and if you're going to continue to have the same level of success that you've had, but they've done a really good job of it, and they've done a good job this year, and they probably have 2 or 3 more spots left to fill. There's individual things that I certainly question, some of the wide receivers, blah, 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 but on the whole, I think they've shown a pretty decent prolificacy when it comes to dealing with the portal, getting kids in that fit both talent and scheme, and I tip my hat to them on that. They've done a good job.
I think that's fair. I think they have absolutely raised the talent floor. Now, part of it is because they've got 3 years, not a year and 3/4 like the last guy did. Now, not a whole lot of evidence that the last guy was raising the talent floor, quite as much. I think Norvell and them have done generally a pretty good job of scouting players. Now, They all have misses, right? I mean, Kobe Gross was apparently a Norvell guy from what I was told, and that seems to be a miss. Like everybody on the staff has had some misses, but I don't think that their bust rate, at least not the bust that I would attribute to like an evaluation standpoint, are unacceptably high. They had a initial class, which was a early signing period class, and that's it's pretty tough to deal with, right? And then you had your next class, which was a COVID class. Now, everybody who was affected by COVID, that's not me trying to make excuses, but obviously, if you were a new staff, it affected you more than it did some other staffs because, again, you hadn't had a chance to get out there and meet these guys, and we're hoping to be able to do so. So that is that's problematic there. I think that they have done a good job of raising the talent floor. Where I think they have done a poor job is raising the ceiling of potential, right? I don't see a path for them to become an elite level team anytime soon with the way that they have recruited so far. And most of that I would attribute to the fact that they had to cash in on the 2022 recruiting class and failed to do so. To me, it's just as simple as that. But they can get a lot better floor-wise. There's no doubt about it,
Yeah, only one direction really that the talent level could have gone in. I think they've done a good job. I think they've. So I'm pretty positive when it comes to Mike as far as like a game day coach, and he's a good recruiter, not great, but good recruiter. Really critical of some of the decisions that he's made regarding his own personnel, and I think that's has played out on signing day and has played a decent role in some of the misses that we've kind of talked about and alluded to over the last 10 or 15 minutes. And that is where I'm particularly critical of him. And if Mike Norvell is not the coach in 25 or whatever else, I think a large part of that will be actually some of the decisions that he made regarding his recruiting personnel, his on-field staff, etc.
Yeah.
That is where the most of the question marks surrounding the Mike Norvell era from me are tied to.
And that's not second guessing. That was first guessing. Go back and check the tape. Like I don't like this hire. So, let's take Chuck's question. I think it's interesting.
I think there's healthy pessimism, or at least a show me attitude, throughout the fan base right now. But as Bud addressed in his last mini pod, outside assessment is much more bullish. Had we pulled out wins against Clemson, I always love it when people do this, but had we pulled out wins against Clemson, Notre Dame, and UF, would you feel any different about 2022? Probably not, right? But for those who see the silver lining, I see the ceiling in 22 is higher than a lot of folks are willing to buy into. Is there anything that could happen in the next 6 months that would shift your views on 2022 by more than a game or two?
For purposes of this question, are we going to like eliminate things like opposing quarterbacks getting hurt?
We probably should. Yeah.
Okay, because like that would shift my opinion quite a bit. Like if for some reason Sam Hartman went down, or obviously like I'm not being a jerk. I'm not trying to wish injury on opposing quarterbacks, but like who's on the field matters a whole heck of a lot. You
Roster
see that in
structure certainly matters. Yeah. Absolutely.
Sure. Like, I mean, I think when we did our wins, we thought it would come out at like 6.5. There are very few games in which you're going to be a big dog. There are also few games in which you're going to be a big favorite. I mean, the potential variance for you with that many coin flip games is huge. I mean, shoot, like anywhere from 4 to 9 wins. That sounds crazy, by the way. Like if I'm like, yeah, I think between 4 and 8, 9 and 3 is reasonable. But if you think about it, that's within 2.5 wins of what I think your Vegas number will either be or be close to being. When you have this many coin flip games, that's a reasonable range. Like if you told me to go 10 and 2, I'm like, I think you're I don't know if CBS drug test or not, but I'll have some of that, right? And if you tell me 3 and 9, I think you're probably just a hater. I have a hard time seeing them only win like 3 games. But if you're anywhere else in that camp, like, all right, okay, like I don't think 4 or 9 are super likely. 5 or 8, 6 or 7, okay. Things that would make me be really, really higher than I am currently. Um, one of the young defensive tackles stepping up that would allow you to play Dennis Briggs more on the outside, and not just because you have to out of necessity, but because you're able to use that as more of a, um, a luxury. Jordan Travis taking another step as a passer. Deuce Span or one of Pittman or Wilson hitting. Like, I'm kind of counting that Wright is going to be a hit. I think he's a bit of a proven commodity. The rest of the three are very much not proven in any way. And I'm, maybe one of them will be good. Maybe all of them will be good. Maybe none of them will be good. So receiver, D tackle such as it allows you to play Briggs on the outside. Travis stepping up as a passer, I guess. Landing a portal tackle, which I feel is unlikely. I was polling some guys who are on other staffs, and I was like, what do you guys still need after spring? And these are schools, in many cases, that are, in my opinion, in better positions than Florida State is right now. And they're like offensive tackle. So I'm telling you, don't expect to get a high-quality offensive tackle in the portal to come to FSU post-spring, given that, like, I think Bama wants one, and I bet you Georgia would take one, and Clemson, and like all those other schools, I think would love to have a tackle post-spring. So you may need to kind of adjust expectations there, but certainly if you could get one, that would help.
Most certainly would. We'll move to Austin's question. Before we do, though, we'll thank our friends at Congruity. Congruity has had I feel like this has really caught on over the last month or so. A lot of great leads, some new partners that we're excited to talk about that have decided to team with Matt Lewis and the good people at Congruity. As we are fond of saying, Congruity has been nothing but a great addition for our small little business here. And we think that it would have a very similar impact for you. So whether it's payroll, HR, whatever it may be, give Matt Lewis a call. Spend 10 minutes, 5 of which can be talking about Florida State recruiting, and the other 5 can be to see if your business is a good fit with Congruity and if they can help you function at a more optimal manner. So congruityhr.com is the website. You can email Matt Knowles at congruityhr.com, or if you want to DM me or reach out as a kind of a point of introduction, it has been a common method or route of getting people in touch with Matt, and I'd be happy to do so. So a big thank you to Matt and his team for the support that they've given the Nolecast.
All right, let's go ahead and take Austin's question. Overall, what do you think about the coaching staff hires that Florida and Miami have made this offseason, and how do they compare to FSU's?
I think both of them have made solid hires, have done a good job. I am not necessarily blown away by Miami in a manner that some have, but for me, I did like their DB hire. That was impressive. But for me, Miami is going to be a measurement and consistency for me. Like, or how much of this shift in attitude is there 8 months from now? How much of it's there 18 months from now? I'm a little skeptical as to that, but hey, look, Miami has obviously pivoted and has made football a priority and has put the money behind it to do so. So good for them for doing that. I tip my hat to them. We'll have to see how consistent that is, how long that level of commitment is there. It is a pro sports city, and it's not even really a sports city. It's more just kind of a event city, and a college football team that's not on the top of the college football world that you got to travel 40 minutes to go see play is going to be tough, in my opinion, to really captivate that city in the manner that it did 20 or 30 years ago. But they've certainly done a good job, and done a great job in adding a athletic director, and then from there a head coach and the staff that he's built subsequently.
Yeah, I mean, I think Miami did a better job this offseason than Florida State did. FSU gave some big time raises in the back offices to guys who really don't think did very much last year. It failed to get a new receivers coach. It promoted Randy Shannon to co-defense coordinator. I've already stated that I didn't think that was the right move. On the positive side, I like the hire that they made at GM and Derek. And I think that keeping Alex Atkins and promoting him to OC is a good move. But overall, like, I'm not going to sit here and just lie, right? I don't think they did a better job than Miami. Florida, it's interesting. I mean, I like the Corey Raymond hire, I think, at defensive back. A little surprised that LSU didn't retain him. Makes me kind of wonder, like, what they know. You know, almost like when I'm prepping for fantasy baseball, right? So, like, why did the White Sox not give Rodon a qualifying offer? Why did the Dodgers not even give Kershaw a qualifying offer? Like, did they know something, or did Florida just give him a better offer? I do think that the number of staff that Florida has is pretty impressive. Now, you do have to coordinate all those people. You got to make sure they're good. Like, just because you have a boatload of polos does not mean that they're all good. But if you do it right, it does give you a bit of an advantage to really staff up, which, kind of plays into Chad's question here. Like, what if any, is, of course, Chad, our sponsor, so we get an on-screen question from Chad. What if any is the long-term path to FSU becoming a national powerhouse again? Well, you need to recruit elite talent. I think you can make incremental progress on the field. I'm not really convinced how much winning 7 or 8 games in the regular season, which, again, bowl games don't count for recruiting, at least not in the current cycle, because everybody signs early and bowl games happen after the early signing period. You can make incremental improvements in theory that would lead you to getting better quality recruits. You weaponize NIL, which I think they're attempting to do, and that allows you to level up some. Hey, stay home and get paid is a fairly good pitch. Ultimately, though, it's finding a way to get the ACC contract renegotiated. In the long term, if that doesn't happen, all the ACC teams are screwed, including Clemson with their fundraising. Like, it's just not feasible if that doesn't get changed at some point. I mean, it runs through 2036. At a certain point, I mean, the SEC tripling your money is going to be very difficult to compete against in your own region. And the Big Ten is likely to get $1 billion, according to some reports that I saw earlier this week. So you need to find ways to recruit elite players again, and we'll see if this staff can do it. I was talking to a scout earlier this week, and he's like, "Have you ever seen like a worse recruiting staff at FSU?" And I was like, "Well, I mean, Willie's staff had a bunch of whiffs at the end there on guys that they should have pulled off, and that staff with like Bill Miller on it and those dudes at the end of Jimbo's tenure was pretty weak." So I said, "Yeah, I guess, but the moves they made in the offseason are not, for the most part, to me, are not very encouraging."
I think a lot of this lies in the conference that you're in. You have to have someone make a move and cannibalize the ACC. And, I know that there's contracts involved, and I'm not dismissing those. But in 2021, you saw the SEC approach Oklahoma and Texas for schools that won't be available, either 25 or 26. So could 5 or 6 years from now you see some play start to be made on ACC schools? I think so. And I think when one leaves, they all will leave. I'm not trying to relive 10 years ago, but Florida State was pretty close to leaving conferences. And there was a very large, powerful section that wanted to, and ultimately we're kind of outflanked by the president, and rightfully so. The president should be making decisions like on conference realignment. But there's, a lot of the same issues that were present a decade ago still are. And, absent, whether it be, Sarah Blakely or somebody who sells their internet security system for $500 billion to, Yahoo in 2 years or something like that, absent some, giant checkbook in the sky, Florida State's going to have to get out of this conference and be on somewhat of a equal footing, at least from a annual distribution standpoint, to be competitive with the other schools that it competes against. So,
like Michigan State, right?
Yeah.
But Michigan State got a new booster. The guy's a multi-billionaire. He started a mortgage company. So, Chad, to your question.
So it's all on you, Chad.
I need you to level up your mortgage game.
Yeah.
Right? Like the guy's got like $20 billion, and he is basically funding a good chunk of that Mel Tucker contract there for the Spartans. So that is a really, like, if that happens, then they can stay in the ACC, and maybe the ACC is even an advantage in that standpoint.
Absolutely.
They don't necessarily have to leave the ACC. They just have to find a way to get a different amount of money for the ACC, whether that is Notre Dame or.
If money wasn't an issue, the ACC is the best place you could ever be. It would really be a great place to operate from. But like
Easy
you said,
path to the playoff, if you got your stuff together.
Yeah, you've got a nice little geographical footprint to recruit from. But if you're getting tripled every year, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Nothing matters ultimately. So, yeah, that's what's going to happen in my opinion. At least for consistent. Could Florida State have a 2-year run where they're really good? Yeah. Could they have something with a little bit more of a foundation built under it? Chad, get to selling, and we're happy to help you try to do that. And when when your name's on the field, maybe you can put our little initials next to it in very small lettering or something like that. So
they'll have the little circle with CR on the back of the helmet. Yeah. or at the patches.
Yeah, I'd put it where their wallet would be. Absolutely. Put a dollar sign from Chad.
Like Jordan Travis makes the legendary decision of the game to go to his third read. Oh man, I like it. And then all of a sudden that offense is working with great congruity there.
Yes,
I agree.
Exactly. That's what I see.
I think 6, 7, and 8 here questions are all kind of intertwined. Should we read them all and then have a broad discussion, or do you want to take them individually?
Honestly, I feel like you were answering Brad's question as you were answering your previous question. So Brad's question was about Dugan's being retained, Randy Shannon promoted. We just talked about that. Bobby,
I think that people don't think that Norvell is long for FSU as far as other coaches outside the program.
Yeah.
That's my thought on how their hiring thing went.
Well, look, I think you tried to hire Patrick Suttis.
Temporary move until I asked you for a paycheck. Mm-hmm. And you know what? They may be right. They may be wrong.
They may be. You tried to hire Patrick Suttis, in my opinion, 6 weeks ago. He took the UNC job. Okay? That's a decent barometer. I'm not telling you one guy's decision, but that's a decent barometer as to an individual's idea as to where your football program is versus another one. Bobby asked, what role does Taggart's contract play in Norvell's ability to hire assistants? Look, we've been real consistent about this, Bobby. I'm not knocking your question. It's a good one. But Florida State's weakness has never been paying assistants. They've been fairly competitive.
Right.
And, that's just not – there's a little bit of a narrative there that Florida State's trying to be cheap. That hasn't been the case. And, yeah, the assistant pool is at $5.25 million, somewhere in that area. But, where I really think your question is accurate is – Florida State made the deep financial commitment to fire Willie. That was their real step towards trying to be competitive and make a really painful decision and know that was going to cost them a hell of a lot of money that they didn't necessarily immediately have on hand. So that is something that's still, trickling its way through the Florida State, economic ecosystem when it comes to athletic support. I can absolutely guarantee you that.
They did what Auburn only threatened to do.
Yeah, 100%. Great way of putting it.
Auburn should have fired Brian Harsin.
Letting
him coach another year is going to set them another year back because it's not going to work, right? It's clear the guy can't recruit. It was not a good hire in the first place. It was not a supported hire, and they realized it in year one, but they were not willing to do it and pull the trigger. FSU did pull the trigger on a guy they thought was not going to work out because of some things they saw behind the scenes, more so than just the win-loss record. I firmly believe that Norvell got more money to go out and get assistants this offseason.
There's no question.
I don't think there's any, like nobody I trust tells me anything but that. It is concerning, though, that you didn't go out and get them. And I believe that is a reflection of the perception of the program by others in the industry.
We talked about this 2 or 3 weeks ago, that as a coach, you were going to have to sell the idea that, look, I'm not a lame duck coach because I'm sitting here trying to make you one of the highest paid people in your profession. Right. That wouldn't happen.
And I don't think he is a lame duck coach. I did a whole video on why he's not on the hot seat.
You did, and you can quick YouTube search to pull that up, and we cut that out as its own standalone video if you guys want to go back and give that a review. So, final question of the night comes from Edward Street Knoll, I believe. If that's Saint, I apologize. Sometime in the last year or so, you mentioned briefly on the show that you weren't sure if down the road, this was actually addressed to me, sure down the road if the UF and Florida State game would continue to be played every year. Can you expand on why you feel that way? And does the game being moved Friday this year impact that opinion? Is it maybe another symptom of whatever factors would have led you to question the game's future in the first place? Well, I see that Bud, forever quick on the draw, has actually gone back and found his Mike not being on the hot seat and has dropped it into the comments there on YouTube. But to answer your question, Edwards, so a lot of that for me comes from what the SEC is going to do in the future. And the SEC has a real... the SEC is going to flirt with being as restrictive maybe as possible with some of its out-of-conference games. I don't know if that's the right word exactly, Bud. But the SEC is going to... I think we're going to watch the SEC for the next 10 or 15 years push the envelope as much as possible to kind of just make college football their game, and everybody else gets to kind of watch it. And I think part of that is going to be the downsizing of out-of-conference games, and that they're going to go to a larger regular season schedule. And from Florida's perspective, playing Florida State as maybe it's only 1 or 2 out-of-conference games is not going to be particularly appealing to them. So that's where a lot of my skepticism about the game's future comes from. Now, look, I'm talking about a 5 to 10 year window here. I'm not saying that in 18 months some press release is going to be put out that Florida State and Florida have played each other for the last time. But I do have a little bit of concern as to the longevity of the series.
I mean, if I had told you 15 years ago that Oklahoma and Nebraska would not be an annual game, what do you think you would have said?
Would have been hard to conceptualize, certainly. And you would have wondered... you would have had to have wondered what happened in the geography of college football.
Yeah. I mean, they played... I'm looking it up here. They played, every year for how many years? Full games list here. Now I'm on a damn pop-up ad. That's great. All right. So they played... They didn't play in 98 or 99. But other than that, I mean, they've played 97 times. That's almost every single year, since 1912, right? And yet, only one time in the last 11 years. Things can change. I don't think that rivalry is going anywhere because it's an in-state thing. I think you would probably have legislators saying no, this needs to get played. The state governments would get involved and get on their soapbox for it, probably. But who knows? Anything is certainly possible in the long run. I did talk about this on Cover 3 today for a little bit, and I'll discuss it here because we got a couple minutes left, and then we're going to go not live for the defensive spring preview. But it strikes me that all of a sudden the ACC and some of these other leagues are concerned about player safety, and they want a holistic look at the sport, and it makes me wonder, why now? You guys have never really cared about player safety before, but now you're in a rush to take up moves that, I don't know if you guys have seen this, but they're likely to roll back the clock stoppage after a first down rule and clock stopping when you go out of bounds rule. We are probably going to games that have more like 50 or 60 plays than 70, 80, 90 in the very near future. Maybe as fast as this year. So, makes me wonder why. Did they get some kind of concussion data that's really bad, for the future of the sport? And why do these big leagues care about it when it's more of an NCAA problem? Unless, in tying this in with the NCAA Constitution that got passed as part of the transformation committee, right? That I believe Phillips is on, and a couple of the other major commissioners are on, as well as some minor commissioners. What if they're taking over governance of the sport? Like just the Power Five. They're going to have the power to do so, granted to them with the new NCAA Constitution, along with probably granting full baseball scholarships and all that other kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I know the SEC is pushing for all scholarships in all sports to be full. I don't know if that's going to come to pass, but I do think that if you were going to take over governance of the sport of football and take it to a different spot, maybe to a spot where players are employees or there's some kind of pseudo-employee relationship, which I think will happen at some point, and it's probably needs to happen if you want to have a salary cap, right? That's how you get one. You collectively bargain for one with people who have organized. You can't just. Well, I guess they have a salary cap now. It's 0, and it's unilaterally imposed, which is one of the problems that we have with the sport. But maybe they don't want to take over the liability of all these potential concussion lawsuits hanging out there. Maybe that's like I'm trying to read Jim Phillips' words, and I initially dismissed him as like, yeah, player safety. Come on, you guys are just trying to drag your feet and get Notre Dame in. Maybe they're worried about inheriting these concussion lawsuits and not taking proactive steps forward to make the game safer or reduce the total number of hits, things like that. I'm very interested to watch how some of these rules go going forward, right? Like, are they going to get targeting 1 and targeting 2? Coaches want it. Administrators don't. Why? Is it because it is perceived as being less about safety? I don't know, man. Just something to chew on in the 56th minute of the Nolecast there. If you listen that long.
Yeah, you listen that long. Also, I'm not suggesting that you're... I've known you well enough and long enough to know that, normally when you have an opinion like that, there's more to it, or that you've got some kind of interest in the subject, and that's kind of a broad one, but certainly an interesting way to wrap up tonight's Nolecast. Got a couple. Just let me look real quickly through YouTube. We'll try to reach out to some of the commentators if we missed any questions. Casey actually asked me about the ACC Network's coverage of wrestling. Yeah, I'm not fond of much of what the ACC Network does, but there's some nice little programs in the ACC, and I have used that to watch them. Let's see, we had a couple different questions about the wide receiver room, Bud, just saying that there's too many numbers in there, and curious as to how that whole thing will shake itself out, and how many potential departures, in our opinion, you could see after spring from the wide receiver room.
Okay, we'll talk about that more in our Monday or Tuesday show, but I would say on the wide receiver room, part of that just goes back to how good do these guys think they are. If you got a bunch of guys in that room who actually think they're good, then you might see a decent number of transfers. If you got guys who realize, like, life in Tallahassee is pretty solid, relationship with the ladies are pretty good. If you say you play for FSU football, it's a nice place to live, warm weather. I realize I'm not actually that good. I'm probably not going to be able to go play pro ball. You may have fewer transfers. So, I don't know. I'd probably say the over-under of post-spring transfers at the receiver position is like, what would you say, 1?
1.5. I mean, there's one name in particular that I'm surprised is still on the roster. We did a show about this 2 or 3 months ago that I thought, obviously I think most of the Nolecasts are pretty good, but I thought that one was particularly solid. If you can go back and find it, where we did kind of a full look over, and a lot of those kids have already made their way out. So that was a good one if you have a further interest in some of the possible attrition at each particular position group. So, Bud, from all our sponsors, again, if you get a chance to vote for us at Sports Podcast Awards, it's greatly appreciated from the two of us. All our fantastic Patreons that provided a lot of listener questions tonight. Patreon.com/Nolecast if you have an interest in further supporting the show. Shout out to our good friends at Madison Social and some of the work that they've done recently. Great to be able to support them, and just the memorial cocktail that they put together for for Jason there that they had available. I think they were able to serve like 320 drinks over the weekend as baseball came back into Tallahassee, and it's just an interesting time to be a Florida State fan, and we're ever so fortunate to be able to continue to do this podcast, and it's only made possible by the support that we receive from our sponsors and you, the listener. So big thank you, and we'll be back shortly with our position preview series for spring. So till then, this has been the Nolecast.
Take care, y'all.